Well, before Ed starts, I'm just going to do a short intro on Ed. Ed's been practicing Bhakti Yoga for 25 years now, and he's engaged in speaking at some of the world's most prolific and leading institutions, including Oxford and Cambridge. And the demands for his insights have expanded, so he's spoken across the globe in the US, India, Canada, and across Europe. He shares the wisdom of Bhakti into the field of practical transformative application, with a special emphasis on leadership relationships, spiritual personal development, and he mentors a number of professionals both in London and globally. Ed's also launched a podcast recently, which I've listened to. You can catch it on Spotify. What's the name of it, Ed?
Imaginatively titled the Ed Anobah podcast.
The Ed Anobah podcast. You can catch that on Spotify. And he talks about unique personality models, which he's got the acronym for TEAM. So I'm sure we're going to take a deep dive into that and learn more about the framework for understanding self-value and how to develop it. So without further ado, thank you so much for joining us, Ed.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I just want to begin by saying it's a real pleasure to be here. I recognize quite a few faces, and we want to go on a bit of a journey with our time together. But before we do so, I'm just going to say a short invocation. In the Bhakti tradition, we have various different invocations or special or powerful verses, and the understanding is that when we come together, our exchanges can take place on many different levels. Obviously, there's the oral level, we're hearing each other. There's the visual level, we're seeing each other interacting. There's also something a bit more subtle that goes on. Sometimes people talk about energy exchange, but we can also consider that something's going on at the level of consciousness, at the level of our essence connecting with each other and hopefully connecting with the divine as well. So this prayer or this short invocation is really to ask for, let's put it this way, to turbocharge our association, our understanding, and help us to really flourish and grow at many different levels as well. I hope they can hear me, it's okay. Can everyone hear me? Is that okay, or do I need to speak a bit louder? It's good? Okay, if at any point you can't hear me, let me know and I'll use the mic. No worries. So I'll just say the invocation. It's called Mangala Charyan, which means literally to invoke auspiciousness, and then we'll get into it. So Om Gyana Timurandasya, Gyananjana Shalakaya, Chakshu Ummilitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Okay, so it's actually requesting the insight, the guidance, and the alignment with great teachers, great authorities, and ultimately the divine as well. So I want to begin by saying thank you to all of you. To be very honest, it is a great honor, a great privilege, but also a great opportunity for me when we come together like this. My own teacher, he would often explain that the best way to learn anything is to teach it. So I was giving a class recently. We have a centre connected to this project, a centre in central London, and we were giving class. I think it was on Sunday morning. So we were explaining in that class, we were sharing with people that one of the best things that anyone can do is to focus on something they really want to learn, something they want to understand better. It could be a challenging area, it could be a particular area for development. But we were sharing with the class that if you focus in, what is it that I need to improve on? And if you start understanding it, learning it, and teaching it to other people, you'll easily be able to accelerate in your understanding and your transformation of that particular subject. So we're here talking about decoding personality. I'm just going to say up front, I've got what we call technology karma, right? And it's bad technology karma. So if anything breaks, if anything explodes, it's not on you. It's probably me, okay? So just a little heads up there. But let's see if this works. Okay, it's working, that's a good start. This is just explaining about how we tend to remember. And the reason why we explain this is because we want to make sure that we give you full value for your time in this session. Okay, what do I mean by that? It's really an invitation. An invitation that as we go through the presentation today, some of you may want to make notes, either on your phone or pen and paper. Some of you may want to make some mental notes. As we listen, okay, what does that mean for me? How would I apply some of this? How would I take some of this wisdom and use it in my everyday life? That's been one of the most exciting journeys that I've been on over the past 25 years. What keeps me very infused, inspired, and to be honest, thrilled, if I'm really honest with you, is to take deep wisdom, deep principles of reality, and to see how can I apply that in my own life. Not only how can I apply it, but in applying it to start to feel the benefits. So the first point to bear in mind is sometimes people talk about philosophy, and that's good, and there's a role for that. There's a role for understanding. But we want to invite you, not just today, but throughout your life and also throughout your connection with Think Gita, to go on a journey from philosophy through to process and practicality. To take what you learn and to plug in and play, to apply some of this understanding. Because right now in the world we have many challenges. And one of the biggest challenges is the challenge of speculation. People often argue about wisdom. They often argue about the meaning of life. They often argue about different perspectives. I was watching a debate where people were doing that. And it really struck me when I was watching these people argue, and one person would present one argument and their reasoning and their logic, then someone else would do the same thing. And it became so clear to me that they were never going to reach a healthy conclusion by the process they were taking. It was so vivid. It struck me that actually you cannot resolve many of these disagreements on the level of argument. Because right now what we have as an argument is not really about the truth. And I'm sure many of you can relate to that. Often when you see debates online, on television, it's not who's got the deepest and honest argument. It's whoever can make the other person look stupid. It's whoever can take the other person off or make them distracted. It's whoever can kind of just say something that causes a person not to be able to figure out what the hell did that person say? And because they can't figure out what's going on, then they seem to lose. So this journey is a journey that I've been on. The journey from philosophy through to process, through to practicality. And so we're going to share a few things, and we want to encourage or invite you, try them out. See what happens, see the benefit for yourself. And that's a very much more powerful way to understand truth, by seeing, does it actually work? And when I do it, what's the effect in my life and the effect on the lives of those around me as well? So this slide is just speaking to the fact that we tend to remember different levels. Sometimes we remember certain things which we hear, some things we see, sometimes a combination, but towards the end of that scale, where we really start to embody, imbibe, and transform, is where we tend to recall about 70% of what we discuss, 80% of what we experience. We talked about that, plug in, apply, use, and 90 to 95% of what we teach. So the one request I'm going to give all of you at the beginning of this session, for the end of this session, is that beyond this group, this gathering, when you go about your day-to-day activities tomorrow, I'm going to request that you share with someone who's not here at least one thing that you took away from this presentation. Okay? Any disagreements on that? Anyone want that refund, right? I didn't come to Think either for that kind of talk, right? I want to go out. Okay, everyone seems to be cool about that, so that's good. Okay, no one's run away. The organizers seem happy. That's a good sign. So let's take a step on into this. So, we want to talk about many things today, but one of the best ways to think about this is to talk about purpose, dharma. These words are becoming increasingly important in the world that we live in, because people are trying to understand meaning. People are trying to understand, why are we here? What should we be doing? What is the best use of our time? And there's a number of reasons for that. One of the reasons, and I'm gonna just ask, do we have a marker? Okay. One of the reasons for that, thank you, is that actually there's a lot going on in most people's lives. I'll just show you how this works. Thank you. How we should do it. Okay, we just leave it here. Okay, so let's just put this a little bit front and center. Can everyone see the board okay? Yeah? Okay. The chair behind it? Okay. So you can lean this here. Thank you. Okay. Okay, no worries. These are expensive people. Okay, remember that. See, we're dealing with a lot of stuff in our society. When I was thinking about this topic, I mean, there's so much to share with you, but we're just going to drop a few seeds today. I was working with a friend who was ex-military. So he used to work for the British military Secret Service, and he would actually train military people. And he introduced me to a certain concept, which I wanted to share with you, and that concept is called this. And you can tell me if anyone's heard of this term before, cognitive load. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Okay, one or two people. So, to frame this, cognitive load is just like when you go onto a website, right? So, you need to find some information, you found the website, and then you're on the website and you need the information, you click on a link, right? Or a tab, it doesn't get you there, right? So then you think, okay, I'm gonna try somewhere, you click somewhere else, it doesn't get you there. You keep trying and you can't find the information that you're looking for. So after a while, what do? Give up. You actually give up. It's like, okay, this is a bit too much work. Let me see if I can find the information another way. That process is a process that many of us experience throughout our entire lives. Cognitive load, it relates to this idea that there's so many things that we're often dealing with, right? It could be stuff to do with studies. It could be stuff going on at work. It could be stuff going on with family. It could be stuff going on with our physical health. It could be stuff going on with our mental health. It could be stuff going on with our relationships. And that starts to take up a lot of the processing power here, right? I have to change my laptop. Because when I use my laptop, the whole thing stalls, right? So life's telling me you need to buy another one, right? And the way the laptop stalls is because sometimes the RAM, the memory that's used to run those applications, is not working properly. There's too much. So now when you try and launch something, it just doesn't launch. It just goes slowly because the processor, the RAM, is not actually working properly. And that's a very powerful analogy for what's going on in the lives of most people. There's so much that we're dealing with, and therefore we can also start to see that within society there's an increasing degree of overwhelm, anxiety, and what happens after a while is when people feel a little bit too much is going on, it can lead to burnout, it can also lead to disengagement. But the dangerous thing about that is that when I disengage, do my issues go away? In many cases, I'm not dealing with them and they're actually getting bigger, or they're becoming worse. Well, he didn't get back to me, what happened, right? Or so many things can be going on. So this cognitive load is an issue. It relates to this topic, and I'll show you how as we go through. Another issue, and this is another thing that my colleague, he's no longer working with us, but another thing he introduced me to is this. You can see I didn't do so well at art, right? But this is actually meant to be a bucket, okay? This is a bucket. So this is called the stress bucket. So the idea here is that every one of us has a stress bucket. We have a certain capacity to deal with stuff in our lives. And there's things that come on in our lives which fill up that particular bucket. So I'm going to ask you, what are some things that come in our lives that start to cause some stress? If you can give me a few examples.
Work.
Okay, so work can be definitely a stressor. Okay, so yep, definitely that can start to fill the bucket. What else?
Health.
Health is definitely one, right? So many things related to our health can fill the bucket. What else?
Family.
Okay, family, yep, you can choose your friends, but you cannot choose your family. Although I've tried. Okay, so family can be another cause of stress. Anything else?
Finances.
Okay, right? All about the Benjamins, right? The money can be a big thing. Okay, I'll just do like this or like this. That was no reference to Diddy, by the way. We're not talking about that. Okay, so health, work, family, finances, what else? So relationships can be a big one. Okay, so there's many things that can be stresses. And what that starts to do is it starts to fill up this bucket. Now, different people have different sized stress buckets. So some people, and it's actually, research says we all have a natural capacity. Okay, so everyone starts with a certain capacity. Now, what really gets tricky is when the bucket spills over. When there's so much going on and it overwhelms our capacity to deal with this stuff. That's when things can become quite tricky. What we're looking for, therefore, are things which do this, are things which release some of this capacity. Okay? We're looking for activities which start to drain out the things which come in. One of the most powerful things we can do, therefore, is to consider what are some of these areas of life, what are some of these things that we can do which allows us, even though things come into our lives, to also remove some of that stress. A key reason why we talk about personality is because if we understand ourselves, it helps us to understand everything about the way we can approach all of these situations in a way that's more effective and personal for ourselves. I had a friend who was when I was at university, and it was very, very interesting. I don't know if you have this experience where your friends will tell you, I didn't study for the exam, it was so difficult, I didn't really do much study, and then they absolutely ace the exam, right? And I'm just thinking, you were lying to me all along, right? It was a hustle, okay? But actually, in some cases, it wasn't. In some cases, the reason why they were able to do so well is because what they studied was based upon something that they had a very deep, natural, intrinsic interest in. I often think about it in terms of sport, right? You have the same person who's not good academically, but they know everything about their favorite sports team, right? They know how much that particular player was bought for, what position they play, what they're good at, what they're bad at, who they're dating, everything. Because when it's something that they have a genuine natural interest in, then that pursuit is no longer work. That pursuit now becomes something which is just a very natural joy. So that's a backdrop to what we're talking about. We're looking at personality and how it can relate to how we manage our own mental health, our physical health, how we manage our own personal resilience, and how we rejuvenate. These things are all rejuvenators. Life is always going to bring things into the bucket. That's not going to stop. The opportunity for all of us is how we manage those things that come through. I'm just going to move to the slide now. That's okay. So let's get into this a bit more. So this is the idea that if we understand ourselves, we immediately have one of the most powerful keys which allow us to manage everything that goes on. Everything, right? If we understand ourselves, we understand, interestingly enough, if the more I understand myself, the more I understand other people. And I'll just explain that briefly. Let's say you have a ruler. The same ruler that you use to measure this felt tip pen. If you know what the ruler is like, if you know what the measurements are like, you can use that ruler to measure anything. So there's a natural relationship between knowing yourself and being able to see and understand different people and knowing how they function. The more I know myself, the more automatically I can therefore enhance every type of relationship that I have. And we'll do an exercise on that. One of the things we're going to do today is we're going to give you a link and put it on the slides. And you'll be able to do the link and you'll be able to immediately do an assessment which will help you to understand something about your personality. Okay? So brace yourself. It's coming. Okay, let's move on. So we wanted to talk about this point. Let's see. Okay, I'll be careful. So this idea of Dharma is very powerful. Who's heard of this word before, Dharma? Okay. It's an increasingly popular word. Dharma has many different meanings. One of the meanings of Dharma is the nature of something. For example, a great example that came up. So we've got water here. Okay. So if I look at this water, if I think about water, what I'm trying to get at is what are the defining characteristics of it? What are the essential qualities of water? So for example, if it's not wet, it's definitely not water. Right? So we could say that one of the defining characteristics of water is its wetness. If it's not fluid, again, it's not water. So another defining characteristic of water is that it's fluid. Okay, so you could say that that's the dharma of water, to be wet, to be fluid. We could say that the dharma of fire, again, the defining characteristics or the essential nature of fire is to be hot, is to be bright, is to burn. Right? So just as different things have their dharma or their defining characteristics, each and every one of us also have certain characteristics. Certain things that really define the kind of person we are, the kind of way that we tend to think, the way that we tend to view the world as well. So this is really looking at natural laws as well. The way that things tend to act and the way that things tend to react. The ways that people tend to act and react. And again, the more I understand myself, it can inform every single choice that I make. I'll be very honest with you. As I studied this topic, I started to see that there were some people, they were doing things and it wasn't really in line with who they were. It could be because of peer pressure, right? It could be because their parents wanted them to do a certain kind of, occupation or career. I saw a documentary years ago about parents who didn't make it in Hollywood, and they were pushing their children to become actors and actresses. And you could see these really young children like dressed up to the nines and trying to audition for roles. And it felt a little bit awkward, to be honest with you. And you could see how sometimes an individual's own unfulfilled desires are trying to be lived out through other people. And it was interesting in the documentary, it pointed out that oftentimes when those young children become older, they often resent their parents. Because mum and dad were forcing me to do something that they wanted, but not something, they weren't selfless enough to really understand, who am I, right? What am I meant to be doing? What kind of person am I? What do I need in order to flourish? I often talk about the square peg in the round hole. Just a quick point on that. How many of you have ever seen that happen? How many of you have ever seen someone and you could see that they're a wonderful person. They're a wonderful person, but they're just not in the right arena, in the right situation, and therefore they're not really flourishing. Raise your hand if you've ever seen that happen. Okay, I think we've all been there, we've all seen that happen. And this understanding is really a way of moving beyond that. So it can also help us to understand our career choices, our dream career. So what I do for a day-to-day living is I'm a leadership consultant. So I train leaders around the world, literally thousands of leaders. So I do that for a global organization. And every single day it's energizing, every single day. Right? Because actually the way we also train them, it's not like a lecture. It's not like, you come in, I'm going to teach you this and everyone goes home. It's far more interactive, far more immersive. And it's always looking at how we take the understanding and how we apply that in our day-to-day lives. So the more we do that, the more we can understand, what are my talents? What are my skills? What are my values? There's I can't remember whether the statistic is that right now, I think 1 or 2/3 of marriages, at least in the Western world, end in divorce. Can you believe that? And that's not speaking about the people who stay officially married and just hate each other. Okay? And that happens a lot as well, right? So that's the unofficial stuff. One of the reasons is that because people get into stuff they don't know themselves. I don't know myself, I don't know the other person, therefore, we're walking into the unknown. We don't necessarily see that. One study I learned about said that the marriages which are happiest and the marriages which have the most depth and the most satisfaction according to both the partners in that marriage are ones where the people who've come together have very compatible and aligned values. Aligned values. Right? And I was thinking about this point. If people knew this at an early stage in their life, you could literally reverse that entire trend. That's why this knowledge is so powerful, because the deeper the knowledge, the more profound and powerful the effect of that knowledge if it's properly applied. let's move on. So this is really self-awareness. This is what we're really talking about. How do I know myself? How do I understand what kind of person I am? And then I can use that to inform my choices. I can use that to inform the kind of studies that I do, right? If you know, I studied philosophy and economics. I hated economics, I won't lie, I hated it. But philosophy, I could do it forever, right? It was absolutely fantastic. It was incredible. And I thought back, I thought if I'd have known this stuff at that time, it would have been dangerous. I can't lie to you. It would have been dangerous. Because then I could make all kinds of informed choices. I know what I'm naturally interested in, motivated to do, good at, and I can make those same choices at different stages of life in order to optimize everything that I do in order to offer more to society. It's a very, very powerful understanding. So, we're really talking about knowing ourselves, and there's different frameworks to do this, okay? So, they mentioned my podcast. So, my wife and I, and she's a genius, so I have to give her credit. It's actually her framework. She came up with the framework. So we started the podcast. It's not recent, actually. It's quite old. But I've been meaning to do some more episodes. But you can find it on Apple and other places as well. So it's called the Anobah podcast, because my wife's shy. That's my answer to that one. But we talk about different things. And one of the things we talk about is a model called the team model. And what this model does is it really translates an ancient system of knowledge into the modern world, looking at 4 types of personality and helping us to understand what kind of personality we have. I'll let you into something I was thinking about a lot recently, and that is that we live in an age of AI. And one of the powerful things about artificial intelligence, and the reason why there's so much money and energy being put into this, is because when they have huge samples of data, it's not just that, that's one factor. Huge samples of data plus data that is not biased. Okay? So you've got like huge sample and it's just the data that's out there, right? It's not like we've just chosen one section that's like unrepresentative. When you have a huge amount of data that's unbiased, then the conclusions that you get from that kind of data are extremely powerful and extremely accurate. So it's interesting, many of the conclusions that you'll see society reach over the next 10, 20 years, I guarantee you, many of the conclusions that you'll see society reach over the next 10, 20 years will be conclusions which are already present in certain ancient texts and traditions. I will put my life on it. This team model, it's mentioned in various what we call Vedic literatures, one of them being the Bhagavad Gita, hence think Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita talks about 4 types of personality. And not only that, it goes on to say that those 4 types exist in every society. So, unfortunately, my mother passed away. And my parents are from Ghana in West Africa. And so, in Ghana, there's different communities. I know, just like also in India, there's different communities, etc., and many other places. So my mum, the community that she's from is called Ashanti. Who's heard of that word before, Ashanti? What have you heard about the Ashanti? Don't be shy about it, by the way. What have you heard about the Ashanti community? They tend to be what? Any guesses, thoughts? They tend to be warrior-like. The Ashantis were known to be very warrior-like as a community. So there's different communities. The community my wife's parents are from, they actually are more like, they're educational, they're educators, they're more peaceful, right? But I'm from the kind of more, let's have a fight, right? Let's take it outside, that kind of community. So it's very interesting because even there, some of these different personality types, you see them in the different communities which are there. So it's a very, very, very powerful point. These trends, these patterns, these insights, what I have learned over the 25 plus years is that they are descriptions of reality. They're descriptions of patterns that are patterns of reality. So when we're able to tap into them and use them, amazing things happen. So we mentioned there are these 4 personality types. I just want to give you a quick rundown on each of these types. The first one we call the teacher personality type. So Personalities who have this particular personality, and again, it's across all genders, all nations, ethnicities. You'll find that there are some people who are very much in that space, who have a natural tendency to be very philosophical. Now, just to give you some examples, I don't know how many of you are familiar, well, you'll be familiar with people like Einstein, Gandhi, etc. They're very famous teacher personality types. These personality types tend to be very analytical. They like to have space to think, to study. They tend to be a little bit more reserved, right? More introspective. In the Bhagavad Gita, one of the verses, Bhagavad Gita is one of the ancient literatures of the Vedas, it talks about the introspective sage, right? So people who have this kind of personality, and as we go through, think about your friends and your contacts. You may know some people like that. They want to think about things. They want to study things, right? They want to discuss what's the truth. They tend to be a bit more philosophically considerate in that sense. So these are what we call the teacher personality type. Studious, very reflective. Does anyone know there's a kirtan. Kirtan's a certain tradition of music. A kirtan artist called Janavi Harrison. Okay, so some of you will have heard of her. So she's a teacher personality type. Even though she's very, very popular, we saw her, I can't remember the last time we saw her, but we were at some event in America. And even though she's very popular in her field, she's sitting at the back and just being very, very quiet. She just likes to have her space to herself. So you have some people who are like that. They like to organize knowledge, and they tend to do very well in work or roles which allow them to do what? To teach, to research, to analyze, to process knowledge, and to communicate knowledge. They tend to do well in those kinds of environments. By the way, bear in mind, that doesn't mean they have to be a teacher, per se, but it's actually the capabilities. It's what they like to do in terms of a capability. So like to teach. They can teach anywhere, right? I work in an investment bank, but all I do all day is I teach. I'm teaching adults. So it's not the situation, it's actually what you do within that situation that really gets to the essence of this. So just saying that because no one should think that, oh, if I've got this personality, I can only do one thing. Not at all. It's actually within any field, what are the kind of capabilities or skills or talents that you're expressing? That's the key point. The second, apart from the teacher, is the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur personality types, they're very good at making money, okay? Maybe some of you in the room are good, and if so, talk to me after the presentation, okay? Some people are just very, very good at making money. I know many people in my community who are like this, who are very good at making money. I have a friend called Creeper Moya. He's actually Janavi's father. And so we were meeting, we met at, there's a restaurant nearby called Govinda's. And we were speaking, and he had done a ceremony for one very wealthy millionaire. And this millionaire owns a recruitment organization near Oxford Circus Station. He's a headhunter. So what he does for a living is he'll go to people and these are all people who are earning six figures or more. And he'll go to them and basically headhunter means that he'll look for people who are in a good position and try to steal them away from one company to work for another organization. So Creeper Moya told me about him, and I did some work experience in his company. I was there for a week. So on the Friday, at the end of the work experience, they called me into, him and the second in command, they called me into a room. And they spoke to me and said, Ed, we've been watching you for the week, watching how you interact with people. And he said that we've seen that you have very good character, and you're friendly, and you're very genuine. And he said to me, correctly utilized, we can make a lot of money from you. And I was thinking, that's an interesting thing to say, right? Most people would not say that. But what he was doing was he was reframing. And this is the essence of people who are naturally good at business. A naturally good business person, when they see anything, they reframe. It's not something that they have to be taught at school. It's something that they actually have as a natural psychology, meaning that they look at something and they can figure out in what situation would that same thing be worth more money. Okay, so They can see an individual who's got some talent, and they can figure out, if we dressed you in a different way, and we changed your name, and we put a brand around you, and we put you on stage in this environment, we could get the crowd to pay millions for your products, services, music, whatever it is. It's reframing. It's the ability to see a context in which the same thing is worth more. Just like sometimes people will go to India and they'll see something which you can buy in India, and it's maybe carved in India, and it's being sold relatively cheaply, and they think, you know what, I could buy that product here for very, very little, and we could sell it in Harrods, Sloane Square, and we could charge like literally 1,000 times the price that we bought it for. So there are people who are very naturally good at reframing, seeing how the same thing in a different situation can be worth more money. That's the essence of what we call the entrepreneur personality type. So they're good at reframing, they're very productive. They're very good at scaling something, right? How do I make the same thing go a lot further? To give a very interesting example in terms of people in my own community, my natural tendency, whenever I'm looking to put together a presentation, I had a natural tendency, still there to a good extent, to always come up with new and original content. It's a tendency that I have. But I knew some people in my community who are entrepreneurs, and I started to notice, what do? They would design something once, just once, and then just present the same thing again, and again, and again. I thought, wow, it's amazing. And sometimes they'll just put a different title on it. It's the same presentation. They haven't put any more work, any more time, but they do it once, just change the title slightly, maybe change one slide, and then present it again. And it was a very natural thing, productive and able to scale. I do one thing, I reproduce it 1,000,000 times, and I give it to different audiences. Every audience thinks, wow, that's amazing. You came up with this really new concept. Well, yes and no. They came out with it like let's say 2 years ago, and they've been given the same thing again and again and again to different people. Again, it's a natural psychology. Very good at being productive and able to scale. And such people are very quick thinking. Right? So we know some people like that. Very, very quick thinking. Very, very sharp. Very tactical. So in the moment, they're very quick in the moment. But not necessarily over the long term. That's where every personality has strengths and weaknesses. The teachers are very, very good over the long term. Over the long term, very dangerous in terms of being able to see very, very far ahead, but not necessarily quick in the short term. So everyone has strengths and weaknesses. So teacher, entrepreneur. The next one is the artisan or the artist personality type. Now these people are very good with artistic expression, right? Very good at being able to communicate emotions. So you'll see many famous actors, actresses, singers are artists, artisans. And they can also be good with arts and crafts, very good with their hands, producing things with their hands. So artistic expression is very strong, very good with their hands, can be incredibly skilled entertainers, incredibly powerful in terms of communicating emotions. So I was always into R&B, right? For many, many years. This is all coming out now, okay? I'll have to confiscate the video afterwards, but I was always into the R&B music, and there were so many artists like that. And they could be talking about, dry cleaning, and like, I was dry cleaning, baby. And it just starts to think like, wow, and you feel like this is something very deep and emotional, but it's like, they're singing about dry cleaning. It's just dry cleaning. but it's the emotion of it that really kind of pulls people in. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that everyone who's a singer is automatically an artist. It's just a personality. It's a personality type. So many actors, singers, dancers, anywhere where you see people who have a natural leaning towards emotional expression. They may be, not in every case, but in some cases, they are the artistic personality or artisan personality type. Let's go to the last one, M. So again, I also know quite a few people in this space, monarchs. And I know some of you in the room are also monarchs as well, so we'll talk about that another time. The monarch, they're natural leaders actually, but these people, they're very sensitive about being disrespected. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, who's one of the central characters of the Bhagavad Gita, he falls into this personality type, the monarch. One of the things that Krishna tells Arjuna in the conversation of the Bhagavad Gita, because Arjuna doesn't want to fight, he says to him, if you don't fight, the people in the opposing army, they will think that you're a coward, right? They'll think that you've left the battle because you were weak and you couldn't stand up for yourself. Krishna's actually saying that to him to encourage him to fight, but he's saying that because he knows you have this personality. If I tell you that if you don't fight, people will think that you're weak and they'll disrespect you, it will trigger you to think, hold on, I'm gonna think twice about this. Because I don't want to be seen as weak or I don't want to be disrespected. For the monarch, dishonor, in many cases, is worse than death. So there are some people who are naturally like this. I have two brothers. I was just with my brothers recently. So the brother just below me in terms of age, Arnold, he's a monarch. So if you see, if he sees that you're being mistreated or something like that, it doesn't matter if you're a complete stranger, he'll step in and actually defend you. And it's a very natural proclivity. So monarchs, they actually tend to lean into a conflict, right? They're what we call conflict resilient. They don't mind actually having a confrontation with people. In fact, in many cases, they enjoy it. They actually like it. So some people are like that by nature. Sometimes people think that, oh, it's about upbringing. Upbringing does play a role. It does play a role. Some people think it's about training. Training also does play a role. But we all have what we call default patterns. We all have default patterns. So what you see in people is usually building on or repressing certain natural patterns that we have from birth. Very, very interesting point to bear in mind. So the monarchs, they like to organize people. They're very good at getting stuff done. Execution focused, action focused. The head of the company I work for is a monarch. And it actually works incredibly well because monarchs also, they're interested in community. They like to bring other people together. They want to see everyone get along in a harmonious way. They're also very sensitive to justice and injustice. If they feel, okay, that's unfair, everyone wants to be treated well and treated properly. But for the monarch, they're more concerned about that than the average person. And they're more ready to stand their ground in order to make sure that things are done in a way that's fair, in a way that's also just. So the Bhagavad Gita is speaking about these four basic types of personality, and it's explaining that everyone fits into one of these four. Just to make that clear, what I mean by that. We have traits of all four. Let's be very clear, because sometimes people misunderstand. Everyone has traits from all four, but our personality type is where the majority of our tendencies are present, okay? This is important, otherwise people misunderstand. Everyone studies, everyone can teach. But there are some people, they have a leaning for that and they really go in, and it's a very, very strong talent, it's a very natural talent. They could do that for a long period of time, again and again, right? Everyone is into making sure that they themselves are treated properly and treated justly. But there are some people, they actually get energy from standing up and protecting other people. It actually energizes them. So when we're talking about personality, what we're really speaking about is where you get your energy. Where you get your energy. I had a period where I had some fatigue, chronic fatigue. And when at that particular period in my life, this knowledge, it was absolutely outstanding. What was happening is because I had this chronic fatigue, but because I knew this knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, I was able to position myself in such a way that even though I had less energy, that the work and the way that I was living was actually recovering that energy. So think of it just like a mobile phone, right? So there's some apps which are draining your battery, but then you're also plugging it in. So then batteries are being drained by some apps, but because you plugged in your battery, the energy is coming back again. So the overall effect gets you back to where you need to be. Do you see how it works? And this is something that I find to be incredible. What I find to be incredible, and I'll bring this back again to just show you this, is that every single one of us, actually I'll turn this upside down because I want to make this point. What I find to be incredible is that every single one of us, we're like a living equation. What do I mean by that? There are some things in our lives which are actually increasing our energy. So you spend time with friends and you really enjoy that. There may be hobbies and interests that you have, and those are actually increasing your energy. And then there are also some things in life which are causing some of our energy to go down. Okay? You have a conflict with someone, you're in a situation that's kind of tricky or difficult. Where we are overall is the sum total of all those different influences. That's the point. Where we are overall is the sum total of all those different influences. So when we understand personality, we can understand more about how to gain that energy and how to use that energy in a positive way. How much time do I have left? I just want to just check.
We've got some time.
We've got some 15 minutes? Okay. So I'll just say one last comment and then I'll open up for some questions as well. I'll also give you the opportunity to do the test to see what your personality is. I want to just touch upon the reason for this whole understanding in the Bhagavad Gita. It links to what I said. What we find in the modern society is that there are many things that come at us. Health issues, as you said, mental health issues, so many things, which can be draining. And what we want to do is situate ourselves in life so that we have the energy to do things which will really help us to grow and that will help society to flourish as well. The way this works is as follows. Follow me on this. This is the framework. At one point in society, in recent times, there was lifestyle versus medicine. What I mean by that, people would live, a bit recklessly, then they go to the doctor, give me some pills, fix me. Okay, so it was lifestyle versus medicine. When society became a bit more developed, and a friend of mine works in this field, then you have lifestyle as medicine. So a friend of mine is a doctor from Canada, and he actually has a qualification in what they call lifestyle medicine. So it's how you eat, the times that you wake up, all of these different things, and talking about how your lifestyle is actually healing if you do it in the right way. So you have lifestyle versus medicine, a bit more evolved, lifestyle as medicine. There's a third level. You have lifestyle versus meditation. The mental health challenges that we have in the world right now, people are often looking for some way out because life can often be so hectic and stressful. It's like, I want to have a meditation app, mindfulness app, or something, maybe I'll go for a jog, or there's something that's going to give me back some of the mental peace because life can be challenging. So the third stage is lifestyle versus meditation. But what the Bhagavad Gita is talking about is something much more revolutionary. The fourth stage is lifestyle as meditation. In fact, the fourth stage is lifestyle as meditation and lifestyle for meditation. What do I mean by that? The Bhagavad Gita, when it talks about these personality types, is really talking about how we can live our lives so that the mind is more peaceful, so that the mind can be focused on a higher goal. I repeat that. How do we situate ourselves in our lives so the mind is more peaceful, so that the mind can peacefully focus on a higher goal? Meditation. Meditation that's actually meant to elevate the consciousness. One of my most dearly loved mentors, he passed away in 2001, and he was a great spiritual leader, extremely powerful, but also just very, people were scared of him, I'll be honest with you. Some people were scared of him. But he was, as much as he could be strong, very strong, because we had that connection with him, he was an incredibly soft-hearted person. And so he was doing his PhD at Cambridge University. So myself and a few others, we would go and visit regularly. He was doing his PhD on his own teacher, whose name is Prabhupada. And so he gave a class once, and it always stayed in my mind what he explained. He said that in many cases, when people are trying to take to, let's say, a spiritual path or a path of unfoldment, he said in many cases they could become really successful. He said, but in many cases, they don't achieve the success that they could. And he said, I don't think it's because they get the spiritual practices wrong. Now that's what struck me, because I knew this person was incredibly deep. His own teacher had said that he's a genius. Yeah, his own teacher had actually said about this person, said this person is a genius. He said, I don't think it's because they get the meditation wrong. he said often what happens to people who are looking to take that spiritual journey is because the way that they're living, the way that they've set themselves up in life is not so, let's say, optimal. He said, therefore, they often have all kinds of things which are disturbing their mind. And because of that disturbance of the mind, therefore, they're not able to get the full benefit of their meditation. I thought that was such a powerful point that he made. Because when he said that to me, from that point I could see, yeah, obviously, it's so obviously common sense that our mental state is affected by the way that we live. It's so obvious. It's not even something that you could argue about. If you see people day to day, you see that when people have had difficulties in their relationships, when you see that people are under stress, when you see that people feel some strong disappointment, you can see it starts to affect the mentality. So the key point that he was making is there's a natural connection between the way that we live and our mental peace. And therefore, if I understand what kind of person I am, I could also, and it will never be perfect, by the way, we're not saying it has to be ideal, but I could arrange my life in such a way that it supports a certain level of mental peace, which then allows me to go deeper into my spiritual practice and my meditation. That was the point. And I'll be honest with you, because I feel so strongly about it. I've seen so many people that I know having difficulties in their relationships, difficulties in their marriages. I've seen so many people, and what they're not saying, but I can see this because I like to study things deeply, what they're not saying, but what I can see is the effect of that will spill over into their children. And the research talks about this. I've seen many people who want to have great relationships, but they're so burnt out from work that when they come home, you know what? That doom scrolling, right? Where people are just like, you know what? My mind's completely overloaded. I just need a break. And then you just see them on the Instagram, YouTube, and actually I feel for them because, and in many cases they don't even know why they're doing it. They don't know that actually I'm so overwhelmed. My mind is so overwhelmed. I just need to numb the mind by doing some thoughtless activity, which is going to give me some distraction from what's going on. And that's why I think this subject is revolutionary. Being very, very honest with you, that's why I think this subject is revolutionary. When I started to understand more about myself, I have to be honest with you, it was like the world changed. You know, I have a colleague who's a bit of he's very theatrical. We were in South America together delivering some training. And he was talking to the class. There's a group of managers, right? And he was talking about some experience he had. And he said that it was like the clouds opened up. It was like, oh! And I was thinking, that's how it was when I started to understand this. When I started to understand this topic, I could start to see why people act the way that they do. I could start to see why they tended to react the way that they do. It was absolutely incredible. So the key point, and I'm going to open up for questions, I want to encourage you, whether you use this framework or not, that's secondary. But I want to really encourage you, get to know yourself. Get to know your patterns and get to understand other people's patterns as well. Because I guarantee you, it is so profound, it can change the way that you show up in the world. It can even change your self-esteem, right? Many people in the world have what we call the ugly duckling syndrome. You know the famous story. They're comparing themselves to other people and thinking, oh, but I can't do that. How come, they're so good at that. And sometimes they're trying really hard. But what they don't understand is you're not the ugly duckling. You're the swan. You're the swan, right? So what we're meant to do is to be the best version of ourselves. But I need to know what that version actually is. And again, as we said, the whole idea of this, and we had some taster of this at the beginning, the whole idea of this knowledge, ideally we use this knowledge to situate ourselves in our lives so we can actually focus the mind on the higher goal. In the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is sharing this, it's actually to allow us, if we can arrange our lifestyle according to our character, it's to allow us to go deeper into mantra meditation, deeper into the meaning of life, deeper into kirtan. So you had some experience at the beginning of the session. Think about it. When we come to kirtan and the mind is really in that space where I can just really give focus and absorption, we can really grow on our spiritual journey and we can optimize our spiritual unfoldment. So, we want to give you some of those ideas to think about. I told you about my karma, the technology, but that's okay. We got through the main things that we wanted to get through. Let's open up for any questions that you have before we go to some more kids. Does anyone have any questions? Anything I can clarify for you? Anything that you want to ask about? Yes, I saw your hand up first, and then we'll go to
This is a question. Thank you for such a brilliant presentation. And I resonated really with the bucket analogy.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a question about how you traversed the time when you were in chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
And how did you utilize the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita and find a way to energize yourself again?
Yeah, that was a really, I had chronic fatigue for about 11 years. 11 years. But you know what was amazing? Most people didn't even realize that I had chronic fatigue. And to be honest with you, for a good period, I was just thinking, what the hell's going on? I saw this, there's one Ayurvedic doctor that I know. And so I had this consultation with this Ayurvedic doctor. She told me, she said, your body was completely burnt out. She said, she said to me, but you actually didn't realize that you were burnt out. She actually said that to me. And then she explained to me, it's because, I won't go into all the details, but she explained your mind works in a certain way. And because your mind works in this way, you didn't actually realize what was going on. So this point about the stress bucket, when we play to our strengths, it gives us a certain energy. You see, nothing is neutral. The association we keep, even the time we wake up and the time we go to sleep. I studied some things around Ayurveda. All of these things have an impact upon the mind. So because of what I was doing, the kind of work I was doing, it was giving me energy. So the fatigue was such that I lacked energy, so I had to use a huge amount of willpower just to do normal things. Right? But to be honest with you, I'm a very stubborn person. That's one thing about me. My mind is such that I just can't give up. Whatever it is, I just keep hammering away at something until I actually get to what I need to get to. So that's what she actually told me. So your mind's like that. She's just like, and it's true. But the situation, the work I was doing, it was giving me energy, And so that was actually carrying me. And then also the certain relationships that I have, close relationships, that was also giving me energy. And that's what helped me to understand the power of this topic. Because once I saw that in my own life, I started to look around and I could see, wow, many people are doing things which are draining them, And so on that balance, they're actually losing energy that they could otherwise gain. Yeah, so my work, and particularly certain close relationships, and also doing things which energize me, which also relates to that stress bucket. One of the things that actually de-stress people are doing things that you find inspiring, interesting, and that align to your values. You try that. Any time that you're stressed, if you get into something that actually it's got to be healthy, because some people say, well, I want to drink. That doesn't solve the problem. We're not advocating that. But if you find that you're in a situation where you're stressed out, and if you know yourself, if you know what kind of person you are, what makes you tick, and you do something or things which are healthy, which really align with who you are as a person, you will see your stress will go down. So this stress bucket, you can actually find there's lots of research on this. Sometimes it's called the stress bucket, sometimes it's called the resilience bucket. And if anyone wants any information, I'm happy to send you information on that. So that's something that they actually teach in the British military. And so that's how I came across this particular concept. But that's why personality is so much, and that's what actually carried me through.
Thank you.
To answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for a great question. I saw your hand. What's your name, please? Angela. Thank you first for coming, Angela. How can I be of service?
I have a question about combining the pursuit of spirituality with the different personalities, and especially for the entrepreneur type.
Yeah.
Because if my understanding is correct, I feel like one aspect about spirituality is really about being detached from material world, which includes material worlds. And how can you maintain a spirituality practice, but then at the same time maintain an active relationship with money?
Fantastic. It's a great question. I've been listening to a 3-part seminar on money, which was given by my spiritual teacher. And it's very, very fascinating. I'll be honest with you, there's so much to it. See, the point is, and this is, I'm glad you brought this up, because sometimes people tend to think, oh, well, the entrepreneur types, they're about money. There's nothing wrong with money, right? It's not whether you have money or don't have money. In fact, it's so interesting. I was in a place called Gita Nagari many years ago, and there was a class going on. And so my teacher was speaking about his teacher. And he was reading a book, a commentary written by his teacher. And it's from a section called a section called the 7th Canto, and it's of a book called the Srimad Bhagavatam. Very, very powerful spiritual literature. And in one commentary in that particular place, it mentions that someone who's too poor will have trouble being spiritual. Can you believe it? It's actually a purport. It says someone who's too poor will have trouble being spiritual. Then it explains why. It explains that if someone doesn't have at least some of their basic things taken care of, their basic physical and resource needs taken care of, what will happen is they'll be so disturbed by that, it'll be hard for them to focus on higher goals. Now that matches what we know from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We know Maslow's hierarchy, at the bottom there's needs on security, basic physical well-being, etc. And Maslow talks about how as these things are sufficiently taken care of, then it allows people to focus on the most important thing, which is self-realization. So the first point is, it's not a contradiction. That's the first point. However, at the same time, where everything comes together is not whether you have money or don't have money. It's what we want the money for. That's the real point. If I'm trying to just amass more wealth because I'm insecure, if I was from a young age told that I wouldn't become anything, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to show the world that I'm valuable, and I'm going to become a millionaire, and then everyone's going to tell me how great I am, then you know what? This is something that occurred to me many years ago. All that time and energy that this person is spending trying to amass something external so that people will think that they're valuable, they could use a fraction of that time and energy to work on themselves to actually affirm their own value. What we see in the lives of many people, and I think it happens for most people, and it's subconscious, is that we're subconsciously driven to our external pursuits because we're trying to prove to ourselves something inside. So my point is, the pursuit of wealth is not the issue, but why I want that wealth. Do I want that wealth because I want to make the world a better place? I want to facilitate people. I want to see people flourish. That's very, very powerful. Or is it that I'm driven by an insecurity? Is it that I'm driven by a feeling that I'm not enough, and I think that if I get the money and if I get the fame and everyone looks at me, then suddenly I'll feel valuable? Because if that's what's driving it, it's not going to work. We see that some of the most wealthy individuals are checking into rehab clinics, seeing therapists, because actually the deep issue has not been solved. So my point is that, listen, I know many people who are spiritual and who are wealthy. You know, I was listening to that class, that is a 3-part seminar called Money, and when I was listening to part 3, my teacher, he mentioned a famous Indian family called the Birlas. And he actually explained in that, I was listening to it just this afternoon, so interesting you asked me this question. And he was explaining in that class, he said that they had actually they'd actually funded some project, I think it was in Africa. And he was saying how cultured they were. He said these people, I mean, mega wealthy, right? But they were so cultured, so they were requested to help to fund some particular spiritual project. And the person who was asked to fund that project, he said, let me speak to my mother first. Let me just ask my mother, and then he came back and said, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. So there can be incredibly spiritually developed people who are also wealthy. But the thing to notice is if they are genuinely spiritually developed, genuinely, not just saying it, then they also have great character, and that wealth is used in the service of developing or raising the consciousness of humanity rather than a substitute for feeling empty inside. So that's how I understand the two things can be reconciled. Money isn't an issue. In fact, to do many things to bring about a deeper understanding in society and to raise consciousness, it requires resources. Yeah? But it's about using it for a higher purpose, not letting that money use us. As one of my friends beautifully said in some, I think, social media posts, he said that there are some people who are so poor that the only thing that they have is money. And I think when he said that, it really puts everything into context. Does that answer your question, first of all?
Kind kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, and I think I get what you mean.
Yeah.
But I'm like then wondering that for people who are like spiritually quite developed,
Yes.
then isn't it hard for them to still keep like a genuine pursuit of money? That's like what I'm thinking.
It can be depending on the person. See, if they're genuinely spiritual and if it's not what they should be doing, it'll be difficult. But if they're genuinely spiritual and they should be focused in that way and they're using that money for a higher purpose, it won't be difficult at all. I know some very spiritually developed people. Who are pursuing money, or they're not pursuing money, but who are generating resources and you see them using it for a higher purpose. And I know some people who are not so spiritual who are also pursuing money as well. Okay, so you see both things going on. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you for your question. Anyone else have a question? I saw your hand up at the back.
Hello, Ed. So I came here because around this Monday I finished reading the Mahabharata.
Oh, wow.
And then a friend recommended to read this. So when you talk about the theme types, you talk about like the teacher, the entrepreneur, the artist, and the monarch.
Yeah.
And then I'm pretty sure I'm a teacher type.
Okay.
According to your spectrum. And then I think I kind of developed a bit of my artist type. And I'm asking is like, how do I develop my other sides of personality? Because I increasingly feel the need to do that. And then in Mahabharata, it talks about like the four different goals of life. There's Dharma, and then the second one, which really impressed me, was the proper making of wealth.
Yes.
And then the third one was,
Dharma, Artha, Calm,
yeah,
Moksha.
pleasure. And then
Yeah.
the fourth one is the like ending.
Yes,
basically.
liberation.
So, yeah, I kind of realized that there's other aspects of life that I need to focus on as well. Like, and those are really helpful pursuits as well to develop the other side of my personality. So how do I do that?
So everyone has to deal with all four of these dynamics. And since you asked, the area of Dharma, meaning like being dutiful, we're using Dharma in a very clear way. That is particularly a strength of the monarchs. Okay? Moksha, the kind of being free, right? Not being detached. That's a particular strength of the teacher types. Enjoying pleasure, that's a particular strength of the artisans. So and Artha, which is economic development, that's a particular strength of the entrepreneur types. So we all need all four in life, but the point is we don't necessarily do them to the same degree, you see? So that's why I said before, everyone has all of these areas of skills, but there'll be some areas where we have more tendency, more aptitude, more focus. You see the point? So you're all right to say that all of these areas need to be, because you need economics, right? If you're gonna live in London, you better have some money, okay, right? And having some sense of pleasure, enjoyment, and so on, that's natural. Having some freedom, some self-mastery, some ability to detach, so you're not a slave of anything and everything. You're not impulsive. That's important. So let's see. And then also being dutiful, knowing what's my social contribution, what's my purpose. That's important. So the simple way that we can do this, in terms of how to develop, interesting. The best way actually to develop in a rounded way is to go through the door of your personality. I'll explain what I mean by this. So let's say that you said you're a teacher type. Okay. So through the door of being a teacher, you may find an occupation that pays you sufficient money. Okay? So that will take care of the economic development. That's the first point. Now, as a teacher, you're also making a meaningful contribution to society. So you're performing your duty, and in that way, you're performing your dharma. You're doing something that, not just for yourself, but you're giving back to society, but you're giving to society something that you're particularly good at giving. You see? This is how dharma and artha come together. Because if you do something that plays to your strengths, you tend to also be more able to make or generate wealth and profit from that particular activity. You see? For example, if I'm not good at teaching, if I'm not good at communicating, and I insist on doing that, because I'm not so good at it, it's harder for me to get promoted because it takes me a lot longer to do very little in that particular area. But if I play to my strengths, then these other things are more likely to come as a result. You see? So what I'd say to you is, if you understand yourself and you try to find an occupation that particularly plays to those strengths, and there's many occupations that can play to each personality strength, you're more likely through the door of your personality to also attain sufficient economic development and enjoyment, and also some self-mastery as well. That's what I would actually recommend is the best way to do that. I also recommend to all of you, when trying to understand yourself, don't just rely on your own idea, okay? It's often good to speak to people who know you, who are close to you, and say, look, you know me for some time. What do you think my talents are? Where do you think I'm particularly strong? You see, there's a system called Johari's window. It's a very famous system for understanding. And what it does is it looks at 4 different quadrants. There's one area which is what we call the public you. So it's things that you know about yourself and other people know about you. There's one area which is to do with things that you know about yourself but you've never told anyone else. That's the private side of you, okay? Your hidden area. There's another area which is things that people see about you but you don't necessarily see about yourself. That's called the blind spots, okay? And then the last area are things that you don't know about yourself and other people don't know about you. Now, what's very interesting is that when you have good relationships where you can be open and honest about yourself, and people can be open and honest with you about what they see in you, when those two things come together, it starts to bring out a greater sense of understanding about the kind of person that you are. You see? So, again, answering your question, through your own, through the, let's say, occupations and endeavors that you have, which play to your strengths, you can also develop more economically, you can also have more fun, like pleasure in that sense, and you can also gain that sense of self-mastery and detachment as well. That's a very good way of approaching it. Does that answer your question in that sense?
Yeah, it kind of matches what I think as well.
Okay, excellent. You're definitely a teacher then. that's good. Okay. Actually, did I see anyone else's hands before? I saw your hand before, then I'll come back. Yes. Or, yeah.
So similarly, and kind of leading on from that, with one's strengths and weaknesses, how does it compare to one's loves for the world? For example, like if one is really good at one thing but they really love another thing, is that average pattern, or is it more that you have this propensity to enjoy what you're good at?
First of all, within the things that we're good at, there'll definitely be a subsection of things that we enjoy doing within the realm of what we're good at. That's the first point. Second, there are many things that we won't be good at, but we do appreciate them. Definitely. In fact, sometimes, because we're not so good at them, when we see those qualities in other people, we appreciate them even more. Right? So that's natural. What we're looking for is a complementary kind of interaction. I was in India. The first time I went to India, I went to a place called Mayapur, and I went for a huge Bhakti festival called Gaurapanim. So when I was there, I was in a place in Mayapur, and there was a river nearby, the river Ganga. So I met someone there, a very, very insightful person, and they told me certain things about my personality. And I'll be honest, when they told me, I didn't believe them. I'll be honest with you, I didn't believe them. But I mean, they were so accurate. They told me certain things about my personality. That trip was magical. It was just things just happened. They told me certain things about my personality. 20 years down the line, what they told me, I still see was true to this day. And what it helped me to understand was about the importance of being complementary. So yes, there'll be some things that we're very good at. There'll be some things that we may not be good at, but we like, what we appreciate or like. We can appreciate them in other people. They may be things that we need to develop to some extent ourselves. But we want to also see where we can play to our strengths as much as possible. When I was thinking about this presentation, I was going to share with you something about an organization called Gallup. That's Gallup. They do lots of polling around elections, but they also have a personality system called Gallup Strengths Finder. And because I work in that sphere of personal development, leadership development, we've in the past trained managers, and where we train them, they do this assessment. And the assessment, and actually I was working in a management consulting firm. Before the job I do now, I was working for a management consulting firm which has 500,000 staff, 500,000 staff. And that company paid for every single member of the organization, 500,000 people, to do the Gallup Strengths Finder assessment. Why? Because they were trying to maximize the success of the company by doing the assessment for all the staff to find out what are people really good at? What are people naturally skilled at doing? And then to see, now we understand that you're naturally skilled or very good at something, how can we make sure that in your role, you get to do the things that you're really, really good at, because then your output will be even more powerful. You see? So, anyway, that's a long way of saying yes, you can have things that you like that you're not necessarily good at, and there's nothing wrong with investing in that, right? But the key thing is to, where possible, play to your strengths. What people aren't speaking about is that oftentimes the relationships are failing because people are stretched so much in what they're doing day to day that they're burnt out. When they come into the relationship, they just want to switch off, and then at that point their partner wants to spend time with them, and they're like, you know what, I'm just burnt out. I need a break. So again, this idea of understanding our personality, and to the extent that we can, it's not going to be perfect. You won't be able to do everything according to your personality, but to the extent that we can, playing to those strengths, it means we have more energy for our spiritual pursuits and also more energy for our relationships as well. Whereas what's happening now in many cases, people are just trying to escape from having a lifestyle that in many cases is burning them and is not allowing them to really make that contribution to society that they could truly make. Yeah? Thank you for your question. Okay.
I was going to ask you about the quiz.
Yes, so can we put the slide back on? Because I've got actually a link on the slide.
Oh, have you? Great.
Yeah, so then everyone can see it. You could just type it into your phone and you can go back.
Is it disconnected or?
I'm not sure, so I'm going to ask the person who's got good technology karma. I'm going to try not to touch it because it'll probably explode or something like that. But if we can get my slide back up, I can just go straight to the last slide. There's a link. I have a friend, and he knows, he's also in that Bhakti tradition, so he actually put together online an assessment. Very simple assessment. It takes a few minutes to fill it in. You just answer the questions, and then at the end of it, it will actually tell you what your personality type is. One thing I should say about this assessment, and we'll bring the link up in a moment, is that his model is slightly different in the sense that it adds one extra type. So there's 5 types in his model. The 4 types that I mentioned are there, but he adds also one extra type. It's a long story as to why he does that, but what I'll do is I'll just bring up the link, and you can actually just click. You can type this into your phone, and then you can you can type this into your phone, and in that way you can actually do the assessment right now, or you can do it in your own time, and then you can just see what it says about you. So let's go to. I'm going to have to go back again. So let's just go here. Can you bring it back up again? Because I'll find the link for you. If not, I can just actually read it out if required. Because I put the slide on here, but that's better. Perfect. Okay. So, okay. Unfortunately, for somehow or other, we don't have that particular. What I will do is I'm just going to read you the actual. I'll just read you the actual link. I don't know why that may kind of. Okay, so you can type this into your browser if you'd like to find out about your personality type using this particular model. Let's see. Here we are. Okay, so it's Peter Williams. So Peter. So Peter William, not Williams, no S at the end. So PeterWilliam.is/Dharma. So that's DHARMA dash. Just dash, yeah. No, just after Dharma. No. So you had it right before. If you / yeah, and then that's it. And then archetypes. ARCHETYPES / Yes, if you can click on that now, and it should come up. And so you can actually do this now, you can do this in your own time. And as I said, he has the same 4 types, but he uses different words for them. So instead of teacher, he uses the word educator, so on and so forth. But if you just do that assessment, it's completely free. It says here, that line says take the vague personality types test. If you click on that and you do that, and I encourage you to get your friends to do the same thing, it's always an interesting talking point, then you can understand something about your personality type just by doing the assessment online. Yeah, and of course it's free, and it gives you much more information about what kind of person you are. So yeah, there's it. You just do the self-assessment and you get your answers that way. Okay, should we stop here? Okay, I want to say thank you to all of you. And I really want to encourage you in this, not just the personality type, but the essence is, how do I set my life up so that my mind is peaceful, but not peaceful for the sake of it, so that I can actually really go a bit deeper in the spiritual pursuit. The ultimate goal of the Bhagavad Gita is to help us to actually develop our spiritual realization, to raise our consciousness. So this is the personality type understanding, and the situating ourselves accordingly is secondary, but at the same time it's very, very important in the world we live in now. My parents grew up in a world where there was no social media. Right? So, and actually, my parents grew up in a world where you could even have one person working, and that would be enough to cover all the bills. You know, people could buy their own homes. But the way society is now, things are a lot more impacting on the mind. Have you noticed that, right? Because we have social media, it's easy to compare yourself to everyone else. People are forced to work harder. Everyone has to be working to pay the bills because things are so much more expensive. So the stress that people experience at this time in the world is different to what was experienced by previous generations, you see? And for that reason, this type of understanding becomes actually more important, not less important. I got into some disagreement with some people that I know because they tried to play this stuff down. But I'll be honest, I think that's crazy. I can't lie to you. And actually, I stand by it. This stuff is even more necessary than in the past, because if you know this, again, it won't be perfect, but it gives you major clues as to how to arrange your situation to support the higher goal, which is that self-realization. And I'm saying that someone who actually lives this. I look into this, I practice this, and I know the power of it from my own experience. And I know that anyone else who does this kind of understanding or uses this, they see amazing results. So I wish you well on your journey. I hope you find some great benefit and utility. Please check out the podcast. It's free, right? There's no cost. The Anobah podcast, we're on Apple, Spotify, so many things. Please also connect with us on Instagram, so at Anobah, and we'll be pulling out more and more content as well. And if you have any questions, if there's anything that I can do to support you on your bhakti journey, we'll be thrilled to do so. And we'll be pulling out some more content and some different things as we go through this year. So if you connect with us on Instagram, then we've got a few more surprises that we'll be sharing with you. And yeah, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for your listening. Thank you.
Just got a quick announcement before we do the gifting. Anyone who hasn't paid, if you can see me or Neha, she's at the back. And we can do card or cash, and anybody that would like to buy any books today, t-shirts, we've got the Bhagavad Gita as well. We're doing, and we're also accepting donations to